Hey, what's up, y'all? And of course, welcome to another Alternative Factuals video. I'm not going front. I almost forgot to record this week's video. I was like, oh snap, yo, I gotta go record this John real quick. But anyways, today I want to do something very different compared to what I usually do. So bear with me. This is gonna be something brand new. And I've never usually done a versus before, but well, I can say I've done it before, but officially, in terms of on this channel, like in the newer age, I've never really done a versus, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But before I dive into today's video and all that good stuff and all that jazz, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you're feeling. And without further and or possible ado, let's jump right into it. So of course, you see the title, you see the thumbnail, you already know what this video is about. This is gonna be about Isaiah Bradley versus the Red Guardian. Now, of course, I'm going to have to make some rules in order to make them compatible, and so that way this fight is as fair as it possibly can be. So these are the rules. Now, because Red Guardian and Isaiah Bradley are technically in the MCU two different ages, I'm going to try and balance out their age in terms of I'm going to age Isaiah Bradley down, and I'm going to basically match his age according to Red Guardian's age in the movie Black Widow. Now, in Black Widow, they don't specifically say his age, but you can assume he's a middle-aged man around like, his 50s. So I'm going to age Isaiah Bradley down about like maybe 20-30 years. So we can actually get a nice even playing field in terms of he's not necessarily in his peak physical form, but due to the super soldier serum or the versions of the serums that they both have, they are still in optimal strength. So they still can be very much challenging for even a grown brolic regular dude. So we've seen what the Red Guardian is able to do when he technically was an overweight guy who had the super soldier serum. But like I said, let's kind of move on from that. So that's one of the rules. The second rule is I'm going to try my absolute best to not bring up I'm about to say MCU versions. I'm trying my best not to bring up the comic book versions of these characters. So even though they are heavily based off of the comic book characters, and even though a lot of their origin, a lot of their characters in terms of characteristics and stuff may be similar or maybe dissimilar from the comic books, I'm not going to compare them too heavily. I'm going to go based off of what is mentioned inside of the MCU, nothing further than that. So without further and or possible ado, let's kind of just do this kind of versus. So we have in one corner, we have Isaiah Bradley, who he himself has received an incomplete but relatively stable version of the super soldier serum. He came into existence shortly after Captain America went missing. Also, his serum was a byproduct of Hydra. They use multiple lines of research, and with the success of the Winter Soldier program, they definitely use variations of it to kind of make him and tested it on people in order to get the result of Isaiah Bradley, which, as you already know, in the Falcon and Winter Soldier ultimately leaned into the fact that there's a more optimized version of the super soldier serum, that the creator is no longer alive and the serum is no more in terms of its extra, but there are extra super soldiers that are currently, well, they're dead. And then you have a US agent who has the last of it in terms of in his bloodstream, who's alive. Now, moving on. Now you have Red Guardian. What we know about his super soldier serum is it was very much similar to Isaiah Bradley's, where it was created in cahoots with with Hydra. So if you've seen the Black Widow movie, spoiler, they did mention that the serum that they gave to Red Guardian was actually a part of the fact that they were funding, the Red Room was funding Hydra, meaning they were not one and the same, but they were definitely at one point allies, and to who's to say, they might still be allies, but nonetheless, they were working with Hydra in order to get a version of a super soldier serum. So he could have the Winter Soldier serum, he could have, the more optimized version. Either way, we know that he got his serum very similar to how Isaiah Bradley did, and that was in connection to Hydra in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So this, now that we kind of understand the basis and the foundations of how they got their serum, how their serum actually interacts with their bodies specifically, and I guess the versions of it, let's do this little showdown. So if they were to go hand in hand, they were to fight each other, a good old versus mano-y-mano, I personally think that like I said, we're aging Isaiah Bradley down, so technically I would have to by default take out some of that experience, but it still wouldn't matter because I still believe that Isaiah Bradley would win. Now, I'm not saying that simply because he's black and I'm black, because, you know, I do believe in black power and supporting black people, but that's not the point I'm trying to make here. Even if I age him down 30 years, remember when Isaiah Bradley first fought the Winter Soldier, he was around in his 20s and they were in war for a few years, so he actually has more fight time experience than the Red Guardian in the MCU. The Red Guardian received training from the Red Room. He received, like, you know, the ability to you know, have hand-to-hand combat skills, so by no means is he a joke, but fact of the matter is he doesn't have the experience, the same level of experience. He does have some experience, but he doesn't have the same level of experience, because shortly after that whole thing on Black Widow, when he had the, you know, had Natasha Romanoff and he had Yelena Belova, I don't know how to pronounce that, but anyways, essentially we do know that in this movie we had them both, and then the fact of the matter is around that time he was maybe in his 30s, so he wasn't very active for very long, because you can assume naturally too that, let's say he was in a Red Room until he was about like maybe 18, 19, maximum 20, then he was on missions for another 10 years. Well, like I said already, ultimately Isaiah Bradley, even though he did not get the serum until a later point, he was already a soldier. So when he was fighting, when he was out there doing what he had to do, for the most part, he was still fighting as a regular human, having, you know, just experience on the battlefield. Then eventually he got augmented and fought some more wars, and he didn't go to jail immediately, but, you know, he did still gain some experience. He still kind of was wandering around, but then not for too long though. Eventually the government was just like, well, you're black and we got to throw you in jail because you have the super soldier serum that's relatively stable, and we're going to keep siphoning your blood, so there's that. But nonetheless, the only reason I personally think he would win is solely from experience alone. Now, what's very interesting is that I feel like to some level, I know that I'm just going to do devil's advocate for the sake of, you know, this conversation. This is my personal point of view. You're welcome to disagree with me and let me know in the comments why you think otherwise, but I'm going to play devil's advocate. So by that same logic, you can, and this is me assuming numbers because there's a lot of details we don't know about Isaiah Bradley in the MCU, as well as the Red Guardian in the MCU, Alexei. So the only thing I can kind of imagine where like it's kind of a coin toss in terms of who's going to win is they probably have the same amount of experience. So even though, let's say Isaiah Bradley, he was a soldier before he received the serum, plus a few years extra of fighting. Let's say he was a soldier 5 years before he received the serum, which, you know, makes sense. And then he got the serum, then he was a soldier for a few more years after that. Then that kind of levels out to 10 years of experience as well. While Alexei, even though he didn't really gain experience until after, you know, going through the whole training of the Red Room and all that stuff, so he gained his 10 years experience after, there's a possibility they could have the same amount of experience just at two different points in time, as well as two different skill sets. Now, Alexei was definitely trained to infiltrate. He does have some sort of hand-to-hand combat skills, even though now he kind of sucks because he was in jail, but he couldn't really take on Taskmaster. I mean, no one could really take on Taskmaster at the end of the day. So, I mean, I guess an acceptable defeat, but you can tell in general, I think Natasha did way better. Everybody else did way better against Taskmaster than Alexei did, and he has the super soldier serum, so there's that. But I do feel like they can have relatively, you know, the same amount of experience, but just different types of experience. And the type of experience that Alexei has in the MCU doesn't quite fit per se as someone who's just a full-on fighter. Now, he can fight very well, but Isaiah Bradley did fight the Winter Soldier, who has very similar kind of upbringings, where he's not like, he's a fighter for sure, but his main primary job over the course of the years was to infiltrate and kind of destabilize either governments or corporations, all that stuff. That was essentially what his job was. So Alexei does have fighting experience, but I think his skill set is a little different, where he won't be as good up front when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. But to be quite honest, like, even though I feel like Isaiah just has a little bit more experience, I do feel like in reality, if they would ever really have a versus battle, or maybe if some way, shape, or form they did cross each other's paths during a time when they both were alive and relatively young, whatever the case may be, I do feel like it can go either way. The fight can can really go either way. I just think Isaiah has a little more experience. That's it, just experience. But let me know in the comments down below what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Do you disagree? Do you agree? Let me know if you feel any differently. Let me know if you enjoy conversations like this in the comments down below. And if you're new, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. And I hope to see you later on. Peace out.